He grew up in a small, warm house that always smelled like home. His mother would be cooking in the kitchen, humming soft tunes, while his father read the newspaper in his usual spot by the window. Laughter often filled the rooms, especially when his sister was around. She had a smile that could light up even the dullest days, and her laughter was contagious. From the earliest days he could remember, they were inseparable, exploring the world around them together, sharing secrets and dreams, and getting into little mischiefs that only siblings could understand. Their bond was special. She was a few years older than him, but she treated him as her equal. Whether they were running through the small backyard chasing butterflies, building forts in the living room with pillows and blankets, or reading stories side by side, he always felt safe and happy with her. Even on days when school felt heavy and exhausting, coming home to her presence made everything lighter. She had a way of making ordinary moments feel magical. School days were a mix of excitement and challenges. While he struggled with certain subjects, she would patiently help him. She never made him feel small or incapable, always encouraging him to try again and never give up. Friends at school often noticed how close they were. Teachers commented on their strong bond, saying it was rare to see such care and understanding between siblings. They shared a language all their own, full of inside jokes, playful nudges, and secret codes that no one else could decipher. It was a friendship built not just on family ties but on genuine love and companionship. The family had traditions that they all cherished. Every weekend they would gather for small adventures. Sometimes it was a simple picnic in the nearby park, other times a trip to the lake or the local market. Their parents would take them on small drives, playing music from the radio and singing along together. Even mundane errands became adventures with the two of them together. She would hold his hand tightly when they crossed the street, always looking out for him, always protective, and he felt an immense sense of belonging with her by his side. Birthdays and special occasions were a big deal in their house. The sister loved planning surprises and making even the simplest celebrations memorable. She would spend hours decorating the living room, making homemade cards, and thinking of little ways to make everyone feel special. On his birthdays, she would be the first to wake him up with a cheerful song, a handmade gift, or a silly dance that made him laugh despite trying to act serious. Those moments, full of warmth and laughter, were etched deeply in his heart. Even in moments of disagreement, their bond never wavered. Siblings, of course, have their fights, and they did too. Sometimes a toy, a game, or a misunderstanding would spark tension, but it was always short-lived. She had a gentle way of apologizing and forgiving, and he too learned the same from her. These small lessons of patience, kindness, and understanding shaped him in ways he didn't realize at the time. They were growing up together, learning about life and facing challenges side by side. Their family life, though filled with love, wasn't without struggles. Their parents had their differences, and arguments sometimes filled the house. But during such moments, the sister would often find ways to lighten the tension. She had a sense of empathy beyond her age and knew exactly when to step in with a comforting word or a simple hug that made everything feel manageable. She was the bridge between him and the outside world, a source of strength when things felt uncertain or difficult. Holidays were another cherished time. They would decorate the house together, stringing lights and making small crafts. They would sing songs and tell stories late into the night. Sometimes their parents would be busy, but she would still find ways to include him in the fun. It wasn't about the decorations or gifts. It was about the feeling of togetherness. She understood the importance of creating memories, and he felt grateful for every single one of them. As they grew older, their bond evolved, but never weakened. Teenage years brought new experiences and challenges. Friends came and went. School pressures increased and life seemed to move faster. But no matter what changed around them, their connection remained steady. They would spend evenings talking about dreams, fears, and future plans. She would offer advice and he would listen, sometimes with skepticism, sometimes with awe at her insight. She had a way of seeing the world clearly and gently nudging him to do the same. The small joys of daily life were magnified by their companionship. A walk to the corner store, a shared snack, a movie night at home. These moments were filled with laughter, teasing, and playful banter. He often reflected on how lucky he was to have her. Even in the quiet moments, like sitting on the porch watching the sunset, he felt a deep sense of peace because she was there. She wasn't just a sister. She was a friend, a mentor, and a constant source of comfort. Their parents noticed the special bond too and often expressed gratitude for the way they supported each other. They would tell stories of their childhood, draw parallels to their own experiences, and marvel at how the siblings had formed such a strong partnership. While challenges existed, the love between the two children was evident in every glance, gesture, and word. It was a bond that seemed unbreakable, a source of hope in the face of life's uncertainties. The outside world, with its challenges and unpredictabilities, always seemed less daunting with her around. She would encourage him to join clubs, try new activities, or participate in school events. Even when he hesitated, she would cheer him on, never pushing too hard but offering gentle support that made him feel confident. Her presence was a guiding light, showing him that no matter what, he was not alone. Family, friends, and neighbors often commented on their closeness. They would see the way she would stand up for him, help him with homework, or share snacks during playtime. It wasn't just love. It was respect, care, and an understanding that ran deep. These interactions outside the home reinforced the bond they shared and created a small community that admired and supported them. As he looked back at those days now, he realized that life had been filled with simple, pure happiness. They had no idea that these ordinary moments were precious, that the laughter and love they shared would someday become memories to hold on to in times of loss. Every game, every secret, every hug and word of encouragement was a thread in the tapestry of his childhood, a tapestry that felt unbreakable when she was by his side. The house, once filled with constant laughter and energy, was their world. Their room, messy with books, toys, and personal treasures, was a sanctuary. Even when the days were difficult, she would find ways to bring light and hope. Whether through jokes, silly dances, or simple conversations, she made life feel lighter, more manageable, and infinitely more beautiful. He often felt that she was the heart of their small universe, and he was lucky to orbit around her warmth and love. Though life seemed normal, there were subtle signs that time moved forward, that growing up meant changes were coming. Still, he clung to every moment with her, cherishing each day, unaware that the fragile thread of life could shift in an instant. The happiness they shared was real, deep, and enduring, forming the foundation of who he was and how he would navigate the world. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the house settled into quiet, he would find comfort in her presence. Whether they were sharing stories, planning imaginary adventures, or simply sitting side by side, he felt a sense of completeness. Life, in all its unpredictability, seemed manageable because she was there, and in those moments he understood the value of love, connection, and family. Lessons that would stay with him forever. The part of his life filled with warmth. Laughter and unconditional love set the stage for everything that was to come. Every memory with her was a treasure, a bright spot that illuminated his world. He had no way of knowing then how fragile life could be, how swiftly joy could turn into sorrow, and how a family could face unimaginable pain. But in those days he knew only love, security, and the unique bond that only siblings can share. The happy beginnings were more than just memories. They were the essence of a life once whole, a love once unshakable, and a connection that would never truly fade. It was an ordinary morning, the sun spilling light through the curtains as he woke up to the usual sounds of the house. But that day something felt different even if he could not yet name it. He went about his routine, expecting to hear her laughter in the kitchen or see her sitting at the table eating breakfast. But the house was quiet, an eerie, hollow quiet that immediately made him uneasy. The phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through the stillness. His father answered, and the color drained from his face almost instantly. His mother appeared behind him holding the receiver, her hands trembling. There was a pause, a long silence that seemed to stretch forever, and then the words came, words he never thought he would hear. His sister was gone. She had been in an accident, sudden and unexpected. There were no warnings, no time to prepare, nothing but a void where her presence had been. Even simple things like eating a meal became difficult. Food that had once brought comfort now felt tasteless, the flavors muted by sadness. Meals were quiet, shared in silence with parents who barely spoke. He longed for the chatter and jokes he had once shared with his sister at the table. She had been the heart of their home, and now without her everything felt hollow. Sometimes he would speak her name softly, almost hoping she would answer back, and each time the absence hit him harder. At night, the loneliness was almost unbearable. He would lie awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the things he would never share with her. Thoughts of her smile, her laughter, and the small gestures of love she had shown would flood his mind. He missed her advice, her comforting presence, and even her playful teasing. The emptiness was not just in the house but in his heart. Sleep became a place where he could escape briefly, but dreams often reminded him of the loss, making mornings even harder to face. Sometimes he tried to reach out to friends, but it never felt the same. Conversations felt shallow, and he found it hard to explain the depth of his sadness. Others wanted to cheer him up or distract him, but nothing could replace the connection he had lost. He longed for someone who truly understood, someone who had shared his life and memories. That connection existed only with his sister, and now that it was gone, he felt cut off from the world he had once known. He also noticed how much responsibility had shifted onto him. Without his sister, he felt the weight of the family on his shoulders. He tried to help his parents, to keep some sense of order, even though he was only a child. Tasks that had been simple before, washing dishes, helping with small chores, or even checking on his parents, now carried an emotional burden. He had to be careful not to break, to hold everything together, even when his own heart ached for comfort and support. His parents' grief often manifested in ways that were confusing and painful. Sometimes they argued, their voices rising over nothing, fueled by frustration and sorrow. Other times they withdrew completely, leaving him alone to navigate the silence. He missed the warmth of the family he once knew, the moments of comfort and security that had been so simple and natural. Without his sister, he felt adrift, as though he had been cast into a world too big and too heavy for him to handle alone. Memories of her became a constant presence in his mind. He would find old photographs, letters, and small objects she had left behind. Each item brought a mix of comfort and pain. Seeing her smile in a photo made him ache with longing, while reading a note she had written could bring tears to his eyes. He would replay conversations in his head, remembering the sound of her voice, the way she laughed, the gentle way she had guided him through life. These memories were treasures and burdens all at once. He began to notice changes in himself as well. The grief was shaping him, forcing him to grow up quickly. He became more reserved, cautious, and thoughtful, carrying emotions that he could not fully express. His heart ached constantly, but he also discovered a quiet strength within himself. Even though he was hurting deeply, he found ways to keep going, to maintain some semblance of life and routine. It was not easy, and some days he felt completely broken, but he kept moving forward step by step. School assignments, chores, and social interactions all became tests of endurance. He sometimes pretended to be fine, wearing a mask for others, but inside he felt torn apart. The effort to maintain appearances was exhausting, and he often retreated to his room, the only place where he could let the sadness fully out. There he would cry, scream, or simply sit in silence, allowing himself the grief that the outside world would not permit. His room became a sanctuary of sorrow and memory, filled with reminders of her and the life they had shared. Even ordinary moments in the neighborhood reminded him of her absence. Passing by places they had visited together, the small park, the corner store, the library, he felt the sharp sting of loss. Everything she had touched or enjoyed carried her memory, and each reminder was a mixture of love and pain. Sometimes he wanted to run away, to escape the reminders, but he also felt a need to hold on to them, to honor her life in the small ways he could. He began to find small ways to cope, even if they were imperfect. Writing in a journal, drawing, or simply talking to himself about his memories became outlets for the emotions he could not share with anyone else. Sometimes he would talk to her, imagining that she was listening, offering advice or comforting him. It was a strange and lonely practice, but it helped him feel less alone, even for a short while. He realized that grief could not be rushed or escaped. It had to be faced one day at a time. Friendships were fragile during this period. Some friends tried to reach out, bringing small gestures of kindness, a shared snack, a note, or a gentle word. Others drifted away, unable to cope with the depth of his grief. He felt both frustration and sadness, longing for connections that could never fully replace the bond he had lost. Social gatherings, once enjoyable, now felt exhausting and meaningless. The energy and joy he once found in company had been replaced by a dull, persistent ache. He also found that his parents, despite their own struggles, sometimes leaned on him unintentionally. Their expectations, though not always spoken, placed an additional burden on his young shoulders. He tried to offer comfort, to listen and to support, but he was still a child himself, grieving and confused. The imbalance in their family dynamic made him feel the absence of his sister even more, realizing how much she had held the family together. Bridging gaps and softening harsh edges, there were rare moments of relief, moments when a smile or laugh would escape him unexpectedly. Perhaps it was a memory shared with a friend, a small victory at school, or a moment of beauty in nature that reminded him of her. Those moments were precious, brief respites from the overwhelming sadness, offering glimpses of hope that life could continue, even without her. They reminded him that while grief was heavy, life still moved forward, carrying both sorrow and small joys together. As time passed, he began to understand that coping was not about forgetting or moving on completely. It was about finding a way to live with the absence, to carry her memory without being consumed by it. Each day was a test of endurance, a step toward building resilience. He learned to recognize his own limits, to allow himself small moments of rest and release, and to seek out tiny joys wherever they could be found. It was a slow process, and he often felt like he was failing, but he continued moving forward. He also began to reflect on the lessons his sister had taught him. Patience, kindness, empathy, and the importance of small gestures of love were principles he carried with him now, even as he struggled. Her influence remained, shaping his actions and decisions, guiding him through a world that suddenly felt harsh and unwelcoming. He realized that while she was gone, her spirit continued to live within him, offering strength when he felt weakest. Through these difficult days, he became more aware of the fragility of life and the importance of family, memory, and love. The pain was profound, but it also instilled in him a sense of compassion and understanding that might not have existed otherwise. He could feel the threads of connection between himself, his parents, and the world around him, fragile but persistent. Even as the home felt broken and quiet, the love that had once filled it remained, hidden beneath layers of grief, waiting to be rediscovered. Living without his sister was a constant challenge, a test of endurance and emotional strength. Yet despite the heaviness, he continued to wake each day, to take small steps forward and to search for ways to keep her memory alive. The absence she left could never be filled, but in honoring her life and carrying her lessons, he found the first glimpses of resilience and hope. Months had passed since the tragedy, and he began to notice subtle changes within himself. The heavy cloud of grief still hung over him, but a tiny spark of determination had started to flicker. He realized that he could not simply exist in sorrow. He had to find ways to survive, to live, and to carry forward the memory of his sister. This was not easy. Each day brought moments of overwhelming sadness, but he slowly began experimenting with ways to cope and heal. He discovered that expressing his feelings rather than bottling them up brought small relief. He started writing in a notebook, scribbling down thoughts, memories, and emotions that had nowhere else to go. Sometimes he wrote about happy moments they had shared, imagining her beside him, laughing and teasing as she once had. Other times he allowed himself to vent anger or frustration at the unfairness of life. The notebook became a sanctuary, a private space where grief could exist without judgment. He also began to seek solace outside the home. Nature became a quiet companion, offering moments of peace. Walking through the park where he and his sister had spent so many joyful afternoons, he would pause by familiar spots, feeling her presence in the rustling leaves, the gentle breeze, or the warmth of the sun. These moments, though tinged with sadness, offered a sense of connection to her memory and reminded him that life still held beauty. Friends who had remained close became important lifelines. While no one could replace his sister, they provided support and companionship that helped him endure the lonely days. Some days they sat together in silence, understanding that words were unnecessary. Other times they encouraged him to participate in activities, gently reminding him that life continued and that he could still find moments of joy. Their presence was a reminder that human connection, though imperfect, could still provide comfort. He also began to reflect on the lessons his sister had taught him. She had always been kind, patient, and compassionate, and he realized that emulating these traits could help him navigate life. Helping others, even in small ways, brought a sense of purpose and connection that had been missing. Whether it was assisting a friend with schoolwork, comforting someone in distress, or simply offering a smile, he found that spreading kindness in her memory gave him a sense of fulfillment and strength. He started to explore hobbies and interests that had once been shared with his sister. Painting, music, and reading became avenues to channel his emotions. He would spend hours drawing or creating, allowing the sadness to flow through his work rather than trapping it inside. Music, in particular, became a refuge. Certain songs reminded him of her, and listening to them brought both tears and comfort. He began to see that while grief was part of life, it could coexist with moments of beauty and expression. Therapy became a significant part of his journey. Speaking with a counselor allowed him to explore emotions he had previously ignored or suppressed. He learned that grief was not a weakness and that seeking help was a sign of strength. Sessions provided strategies to cope with overwhelming feelings, to process memories, and to navigate the challenges of a broken family. Gradually, he felt more capable of handling the world outside his room and the home that had once been vibrant and now felt fragile. He also noticed that small routines could bring structure and stability. Waking up at a consistent time, eating regular meals, and keeping up with schoolwork helped him feel grounded. Exercise, even something as simple as walking or stretching, released tension and provided mental clarity. These routines were not cures, but they offered a sense of control and normalcy amidst the chaos of emotions. As he explored ways to honor his sister, he began to see that keeping her memory alive was not only about sadness. He could celebrate her life through acts of kindness, creating art, or pursuing passions that she had encouraged him to follow. Volunteering, helping those in need, and supporting friends and family became meaningful ways to feel connected to her spirit. Through these actions, he found purpose and a sense of continuity, as though part of her was still guiding him. He learned to accept that grief would always be a part of him. It was not something to be eliminated, but something to carry with him as he moved forward. Each day presented choices, to succumb to sorrow or to find small ways to persevere. He chose the latter, understanding that life, despite its pain, offered opportunities to grow, learn, and find moments of light. Acceptance did not mean forgetting. It meant learning to live with the absence while cherishing the presence she had once held. Family life slowly began to change as he found his own footing. His parents, still deeply affected by their loss, began to open up more, sharing their grief in ways that allowed him to connect with them. He realized that they were all navigating the same storm, and that understanding each other's pain helped rebuild bonds that had seemed irreparably damaged. Small gestures, a shared meal, a brief conversation, or a quiet moment together became milestones in the slow healing process. He also began to reflect on the future. While the past was filled with memories and the present weighed heavily with grief, he recognized the importance of planning for what was ahead. Goals, however small, provided motivation, whether it was finishing a school project, learning a new skill, or helping his family in practical ways. Each accomplishment reinforced his resilience. Life, though altered, could still contain purpose and achievement. The community around him also played a role in his healing. Neighbors, family, friends, and supportive teachers offered moments of connection and care. They shared stories about his sister, reminded him of her impact, and celebrated her life in ways that felt both comforting and sustaining. These interactions showed him that grief, while personal, was also shared, and that collective memory could offer strength and validation. Over time, he developed a sense of inner strength that surprised even himself. He faced challenges that seemed insurmountable, yet he found ways to persevere. Moments of laughter began to return, small and hesitant at first, then more genuine. Joy once thought impossible became attainable, though always tempered by remembrance. He realized that life did not demand perfection in healing, only persistence and effort. He also began to help others who were struggling with grief or loss. Sharing his experiences, listening without judgment, and offering support became ways to honor his sister and reinforce his own healing. These acts of empathy brought a sense of fulfillment, connecting him to a larger human experience and reminding him that even in loss, he could contribute positively to the lives of others. Through reflection, expression, routine, and connection, he began to reclaim his life. The pain never completely disappeared, nor should it, for it was a testament to the love he had shared with his sister. But within that pain, he discovered resilience, empathy, and a capacity for growth. He learned that healing was not about forgetting the past, but integrating it into a life that continued forward with purpose and awareness. As the months passed, he found that he could smile more often, laugh without guilt, and engage with the world in ways that had been impossible immediately after the tragedy. He understood that grief was a companion, not an enemy, and that living fully did not dishonor the memory of his sister. Instead, it celebrated the love and lessons she had imparted, carrying them forward into every action, decision, and interaction. The journey was far from over, and challenges remained. He would encounter days of intense sorrow, moments of doubt, and periods of loneliness, but he now had tools, strategies, and an understanding of himself that allowed him to navigate these difficulties. He had discovered a strength that came not from avoiding pain, but from facing it head-on, acknowledging it, and finding ways to transform it into purpose. He realized that healing was not a destination but a process. Life continued, shaped by memory, love, and resilience. Each step forward was a tribute to his sister, a recognition of her enduring impact and a testament to his ability to endure despite profound loss. Through this journey, he found a sense of hope that life, though forever changed, could still be meaningful, filled with love, connection, and small moments of joy that honored the memory of someone irreplaceable. Changed irrevocably, but the journey to find strength, purpose, and healing had only begun. Time moved forward, slowly at first, but eventually he noticed subtle changes in his life and in his heart. The heavy shadow of grief still lingered, but the sharp edges had softened. He began to see that while his sister's absence would always be a part of him, it no longer completely consumed him. Life was no longer just about survival. It was about living, carrying forward the memory of someone he loved so deeply. He found that small acts of remembrance brought comfort and purpose. Lighting a candle on her birthday, keeping a photo on his desk, or revisiting a place they had loved together became rituals that honored her life. These acts did not erase the pain, but they allowed him to feel connected as if she was still guiding him even in absence. Each memory was a reminder of love, of laughter, and of lessons that shaped him into the person he was becoming. Family life, once fractured and tense, began to show signs of healing. His parents, though still carrying their grief, slowly began to open up more, sharing memories, laughter, and moments of connection. Arguments that had once been frequent now gave way to conversations, however hesitant. He saw them smiling at each other again, even if briefly, and it brought hope that the bonds of the family could be mended. They began to support each other more intentionally, understanding that shared grief could become shared strength. He also noticed a change within himself. The sense of responsibility that had once felt crushing became a source of strength. He realized that helping others, caring for his parents, and engaging with friends were ways to honor his sister and her legacy. These actions gave him purpose and reminded him that life, despite its difficulties, could still contain meaning and connection. Each small step forward, though often quiet and unremarkable to others, was a victory in his journey. His social life began to improve gradually. Friends who had once felt distant became closer again, offering support, companionship, and understanding. He no longer felt isolated in his grief, though the memory of his sister remained central to his life. Conversations were easier, laughter returned in small doses, and shared activities became sources of joy. Through these connections, he discovered that human bonds could provide both comfort and resilience, allowing him to navigate life more confidently. Time seemed to slow down as the news sank in. He could barely comprehend what had happened. She had been his safe place, his friend, his constant companion. How could she be gone? His parents clung to each other, their faces etched with grief, their tears spilling freely. He felt frozen, a numbness overtaking his body. The world around him continued moving, but for him it felt as though everything had stopped. The following hours were a blur. Neighbors and family friends arrived offering condolences, their voices gentle but heavy with sorrow. He moved through the house as if in a daze, catching glimpses of her belongings, the small trinkets she loved, the books she read, the notes she had left behind. Every item was a painful reminder of her absence. He wanted to scream, to demand that it wasn't true, that she would walk in any moment and laugh at the chaos her death had left behind. Funeral preparations followed. The days passed in a surreal fog, a haze of grief, tears, and whispered words. He watched as people gathered to remember her, to share stories of her kindness, her laughter, and her energy. Everyone spoke of how much she meant, but their words felt distant, almost like they were talking about someone else. The reality he faced was unbearable. He was no longer just a brother. He was now a child adrift in a storm of loss, left to navigate a family that was breaking apart around him. At home, the atmosphere changed completely. His parents withdrew into themselves, their grief manifesting in arguments, silence, and moments of anger. They were lost, unable to support each other, let alone him. The warmth that had once defined their home was gone. Rooms felt colder, emptier, as if her spirit had carried the love and light that now seemed absent. He wandered from room to room, searching for any sign of normalcy, but everything felt wrong. He tried to reach out to his parents, to talk, to share the pain, but they were trapped in their own sorrow. He felt invisible at times, a ghost wandering a house that no longer felt like home. The walls, once filled with laughter, now seemed to echo with silence. Even the smallest sounds, like the ticking of a clock or the hum of a refrigerator, reminded him of what had been lost. He missed her voice, her jokes, her encouragement. He missed the way she always knew when he needed a hug or a kind word. School became another challenge. Teachers noticed the change in him, the empty look in his eyes, the way he struggled to concentrate. Friends tried to be supportive, but it was hard for them to understand the depth of his loss. Some offered words, others gave space, but nothing could replace the bond he had with his sister. Group activities, sports, and social events felt meaningless without her. He felt disconnected from the world he once navigated with confidence because she was gone. Nights were the hardest. When the house grew quiet, he would lie in bed and imagine her presence. He could almost hear her giggling, feel her hand brushing against his, whispering secrets and plans for tomorrow. But then reality would hit, a cold reminder that she was never coming back. Tears would flow silently, his pillow soaked from grief he could not share with anyone else. Sleep became elusive, and with each restless night his sense of loneliness grew. Family life had changed irreversibly. Simple tasks like preparing meals, cleaning, or even watching television together became difficult. Arguments between his parents escalated, fueled by frustration and pain. He often found himself in the middle, unsure how to mediate, feeling powerless. He longed for the comfort that had always existed in the small moments of family life, the moments she had helped to sustain. Without her, the family felt fragile, like it could collapse at any time. Friends and extended family offered support, but it was different from the everyday comfort she had provided. They could console, they could bring meals, they could visit, but they could not fill the gap left in his heart. The loneliness was not just about missing her presence. It was about losing the anchor that had kept him grounded, the person who had understood him completely without explanation. That connection, that unwavering support was gone forever. Memories became both a source of comfort and pain. He would go through old photographs, read notes she had written, and recall the countless moments they had shared. Each memory brought a bittersweet ache. He smiled at the thought of her mischievous grin or the way she would laugh at his jokes, but the joy was always accompanied by the sting of absence. He realized how much he had taken for granted, how every hug, every shared meal, every quiet conversation had been a gift he could no longer touch. The sense of responsibility grew heavier with each passing day. He felt the need to keep his family together, to fill the void, even though he was just a child himself. Tasks that had once seemed simple now carried enormous weight. He tried to support his parents, to help with chores, to manage his own grief quietly, so that they would not collapse entirely. It was exhausting, and often he would collapse into his room, overwhelmed by the emotional burden. Despite everything, he tried to hold on to some semblance of routine. Schoolwork, hobbies, and small daily rituals became anchors in the chaos. He would play games, draw, or write, finding fleeting moments of peace. But nothing could completely fill the emptiness. The gap left by her death was vast, unbridgeable, and relentless. Each day brought a new reminder that life would never be the same. Some days anger replaced grief. He found himself resenting the unfairness of it all. Why her? Why now? Why had the world taken someone so bright, so full of life, and left him alone to navigate the wreckage? These questions haunted him constantly. There was no answer, only a deep, aching pain that seemed impossible to soothe. He also noticed changes in the people around him. Friends who had once been close drifted away, unsure how to handle the new reality. Teachers were kind but distant. Even neighbors, while sympathetic, could not understand the depth of the loss. He felt increasingly isolated, trapped in a bubble of grief that no one else could penetrate. The world continued around him, but he existed in a place of suspended sorrow, unable to fully participate in life without her. Occasionally, he would find solace in small acts of remembrance, lighting a candle, saying a silent prayer, or visiting her favorite places helped him feel connected, even if only for a moment. These acts did not heal the wound, but they allowed him to honor her memory and acknowledge the love that had been lost. They were small lifelines in a sea of grief, moments where he could feel her presence in spirit if not in body. As weeks turned into months, the initial shock gave way to a lingering, quiet sadness. The intensity of the pain never fully diminished. It transformed. He learned to navigate life with an aching heart, carrying her memory with him everywhere. Every achievement, every challenge, every new friendship was colored by the absence of the sister, who had once been his closest companion. Life had moved on, but for him, time had fractured. He had been forced to grow up quickly, to confront realities that no child should face. He realized that grief was not a linear journey. Some days were slightly easier, filled with fleeting moments of joy or distraction. Other days, the pain returned with full force, triggered by the simplest things. A song on the radio, a laugh in the street, or a familiar phrase she used to say. These reminders, though painful, also kept her memory alive, a bittersweet connection that both comforted and wounded him. Throughout all of this, he clung to the hope that he could somehow honor her life through his own actions. He wanted to make her proud, to carry forward the lessons she had taught him, to live a life that reflected the love and light she had brought into the world. The sense of purpose became a quiet, guiding force, giving him the strength to face each day, even when the weight of loss felt unbearable. The house, once a sanctuary of laughter and warmth, now stood as a testament to absence. Every room echoed with memories, every corner a reminder of what had been lost. Yet, within the pain there was also resilience. He discovered an inner strength he had never known, a determination to survive, to endure, and to find meaning in a life forever changed. It was the beginning of a long, difficult journey, one that would test him in ways he could never have imagined, shaping the person he was becoming in profound and lasting ways. Days turned into weeks, and he continued to live in a world that felt empty and unkind. Each morning he woke with a weight on his chest, a dull ache that refused to go away. The house, once lively and warm, felt cold and silent. His parents were still wrapped in their own grief, their faces often blank or twisted in sorrow. They didn't scold him or show anger, but the warmth and connection that had once existed seemed lost. He wandered through the house, moving from room to room, searching for some spark of life, some piece of normality, but he found none. School became a daily challenge. The friends he had once laughed with seemed distant now, unsure how to approach him. Teachers offered sympathy, but he struggled to focus on lessons that once felt engaging. His grades began to slip, not because he lacked ability, but because his mind was elsewhere, lost in memories of his sister. He found it hard to concentrate on anything. Words on a page blurred together, and simple tasks felt exhausting. Yet he pushed forward, trying to hold on to some sense of routine, knowing that doing nothing would mean sinking even deeper into the darkness.